Psychologies magazine. Lovely to see you all this evening. It's 5 p.m., but not 5 p.m. in America because I have the wonderful Harry Derbitsky and Greg Suchy joining us today from the States. Harry is the president of ACT and the author of The Evolution of Addiction Recovery. Greg is a life coach and a co-host on the show Addiction, Alcoholism, and the Three Principles. Welcome, Harry and Greg. I'm really delighted to speak to you today.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
What we're going to be talking about today is about how to heal from addiction, and even just saying those words, how to deal from addiction. There's so much information there around overcoming addiction. There's the AA model, which talks about addiction being a disease, alcoholism being a disease. But you have a different view. Greg, can I come to you with that? What's your view? You believe that addiction is not a disease and that it can be completely 100% healed. Tell me more about that.
Yeah, the addiction it's nothing more than a habitual thought pattern. It's something that we created, and our brains are really good at picking up on, patterns and making that a subconscious thing. Just like, when was the last time you had to think about how to tie your shoes? It's really efficient at making these things happen behind the scenes. So at some point we start reaching out for a chemical or something, gambling or whatever, and our brains pick up on that pattern. It says, when I feel anxious, when I feel out of place, I'm just going to go ahead and reach out for this substance and I'll feel better. Now, at first it's effective because we have a lower tolerance, so we don't have all the side effects with it. But as our tolerance increases, the side effects increase, and then we start having more of the issues that come along with it too. So that temporary relief is no longer really relief anymore. It just ends up adding more issues. But it's really just a pattern that we created, which is good news, because if we created it, we can recreate it.
Yeah.
And that's kind of the key, is you don't really just get rid of it directly, you create a new habit.
I love this idea because there's that kind of sense of my name is Susie Walker and I'm an alcoholic. This idea that that you would just repeat saying this is an identity piece rather than just a thought pattern. I love this idea, exploring this idea. So Harry, you have co-created this. You've written a book on the evolution of addiction recovery. So in terms of, you talk about the three principles, or you call it a spiritual psychology. Tell us a little bit about that. So we're talking about challenging our thought patterns. But Harry, you're talking about spiritual psychology. Tell me more about that.
Yeah, see, I don't, there's two ways to approach the three principles, and that is from the thought perspective. And that is more the psychological way of looking at life. And a lot of people, as I mentioned to you earlier, Susie, they always come to me with they don't like their thoughts. And within that relationship, they always want to control those thoughts because it makes them feel bad. And then every time they feel bad or a lower mood, to use a psychological word, they go back to their bad habit. And then the cycle repeats and repeats itself. And, working in a recovery center, their most disappointing aspect was, I'm back again here again. I'm broke. I had money. I'm broke. I'm starting all over again. And they feel hopeless. But the experience, the other way is that it's a spiritual reality. And from that perspective, the inner experience, the feeling of getting uplifted, and then looking at your thoughts. So it's still the same thing. You see, my thinking is doing this and this, like Greg suggested, and then you say, yeah, but I want to get out of my problems and out of my thing. I need to go to what is spiritual, and it's inside me. It's inside me. And that's, so instead of disease, we use the word innate health. So within you, you always have innate health, or I use soul or spirit, depending on which words and who you're talking to. So the three principles are a spiritual psychology, because the first principle is mind, and mind is simply is a psychological word for God. And within that concept, if you don't bring yourself along with God or with the universal energy of everything,
Yeah.
you miss the boat. That's the problem with the disease thing. I'm wounded and I'm never going to be better. Well, you're born unwounded. You were unwounded, and we are naturally resilient, and we have natural propensity to have good feelings, except if we believe we don't. And disease kind of suggests, you're always going to have a problem. And it works for some people. It's like a strategy and a willpower type of approach. This is not willpower. This is free will to think whatever you want with an understanding. So that's consciousness. You become aware. That Greg was talking about becoming aware of what first cause is, which is an indigenous concept. What's first cause? First cause is me and my thinking, and getting caught up in that stuff. And so thought is the bridge between spiritual and psychological. Together connects the two worlds to one. And within that one world, if you feel spiritual, just to use my word, there are cleaner words in the psychological community, but just when you feel that connection, that oneness, you feel a lot more than hope. You have gratitude. Thank you for being addicted. Thank you for all the things that have happened to me. I wouldn't come to this point. And that's Greg's story. He was all messed up and he had all this stuff, and then he had his insight. Well, the moment he had an insight, he saw life with brand new eyes. And the two of us met from opposite ends of the world, and we didn't even want to spend any time talking to ourselves. And we laugh about this. We thought we were going to talk for about 2 minutes on Zoom, and we ended up doing a show for 3.5 years, 80 shows, and still doing podcast, lots of stuff, just because he left the disease world and went into the total healing world. And he didn't talk disease; he talked wisdom.
Sure.
Wisdom.
Yes, sure.
Guess how I felt when he talked wisdom. I liked it.
Yeah, well, I think when people do talk wisdom, I think you talk about that innate health, is that you recognize it. I always say that about Psychology's magazine, is when you hear wisdom, it's like you kind of vibrate on a different level, on some level or another. What you're saying, though, can be very controversial in the addiction circles, because, the people kind of go to AA, or they go to it, which is free, and it's available, and then people can go, and it's the first port of call. So, and it's one model that has worked for some people. We have the wonderful Russell Brown, who's a UK, he's a kind of an expert now, but he was a comedian. And he's a huge, he talks about AA saving his life. So I don't want to sort of say, this model, doesn't work. It can work for some people. But what I'm interested in, why I'm interested in talking to you today, is this idea that, wow, that you could completely heal from addiction. And Greg, that's your story, and you've done that. But if someone's listening to this and they're struggling with some kind of addiction, or someone they love is struggling from addiction, where do we start to go on this journey about questioning our thoughts and also connecting to, a higher power? The word God can often trigger people in non-positive ways. But so what advice would you give to us if we're listening to this and we have some kind of addiction that feels like it's running our lives? Where do we start to question ourselves or be curious about a new way of being? Greg?
Yeah, that's a really excellent question, because that's what leads people to reaching out to try to find something. The key is realizing that you're already where you want to be. It's just that we've created this illusion that we're not there. We have that innate health and that innate well-being that's always there, regardless of what's going on. And now there are some drugs and whatnot that we can put into our bodies that we do have a physical, issue with, is especially with detoxing. So definitely get medical assistance for detoxing if you're in that kind of situation. What we're talking about is after that. After somebody's been through a 90-day treatment program, they're no longer in that physical addiction part, and then they go right back to it. It's, that's the key part right there, is to look at, first of all, when do you feel better? It's usually when you make the decision to use. It's not when it's in your system. It's not when you're high again. It's when you're on the way to get the hookup. You're already feeling better. And that is the clue right there, that you are already where you want to be. You've just forgotten it. So it's more of a process of just remembering who we are.
Sure. And there's also, I think, when you're it's not the addiction often is the problem. It's as you said earlier, Harry, it's the way you feel. Your fear is low mood or whatever is going on for you. You're trying to block it out, numb it out, run away from your feelings. And it's just a way of trying to feel better. Addiction, whether it's food, whether it's gambling, whether it's just you're hijacking your body on some level with a chemical or a phone or something to make yourself feel better. What I'm hearing you both say is innately we have a way to feel better just by innately, just, sometimes you're swinging this far. So how do we, when you're addicted, once it's getting the chemicals out of your body, which is true, but then where do you start? What are the thought processes that can help you start to feel better, to kind of grab hold of something? Because sometimes that's what it feels like when you're addicted. You're trying to grab hold of something good and wholesome and real, rather than this, I don't know, it's like, when you're the sugar high, or you're trying to anything that will make you feel good again. So how do we go to a healthier version of that? How do we reach out for that? Is it just a decision?
It's an understanding. So you will not do anything until you understand how thought creates feelings. You were 100% correct the way you described that feeling concept. And so it appears you are a victim of your thinking and of your feelings and the power of the urge. But at another level, see what happened at one level, Greg was defenseless. And then at another level, he had all the ammunition. He had the answer, the ultimate answer, and he found it inside himself. So until he found a fact, he was a victim. And then when he found a fact, he suddenly realized, oh, actually, it's no different going to the fridge or going for a beer. No different than grabbing a cigarette. No different than watching porn or whatever the scenario is. His mind, basically what happens is your mind gets speedy. Your thoughts get speedy. And at that point, you lose control of it. If you catch it, you see it a little bit earlier, you see, oh, thought is neutral, and I'm the one actually fueling it up with a lot of gasoline on the fire. And so you relax with it. And the moment you relax with it, or you let it go, you see it for what it is. It isn't what you think it is. We're taught the outside world controls me and how I feel. But Susie, it's not true. You know that. I mean,
Yeah.
we all know that.
Yeah.
Somewhere along the line, you're in a bummed out mood. Everything is wrong in your day, and your child has a sore boo-boo on their finger. You drop it right away and get into the little boo-boo on the finger. Now, if you could eliminate the boo-boo on the finger and just say you have that same ability to change thought. Imagine that. We have the ability to change thought. And when Greg learned that he could change thought, he became an expert. You know what Greg knows more than anything that I've learned? It's amazing. Oh my mind. What happens when you go back in, Greg? What's the word?
Relapse.
Relapse. I'm sorry, I went brain dead. Greg knows relapse better than any human being on the earth. Any human being. But he didn't learn it from a book. I have learned so much about relapse because but he basically says, I quote you, Greg, quote Greg Suchy, get off the floor and forget about it and go back to and get into back into living. Don't think about it, just get off the floor.
Sure.
It works. It
Great.
sounds
Absolutely. I mean, the psychology song is, that we can change our thoughts and it will direct us in new ways. And it's the place where we have power, that we're empowered. And it's so wonderful to hear that, around your Greg, in your experience that, you have been able to do that. Have you got in that moment, as you say, is when you had been pulled by that thought or that it feels like a need, maybe that's just a thought, what would your advice be? So just again, for people listening to this, when they're just starting out, they're just maybe hearing this for the first time, they think they're broken, there's something wrong with them, what advice would you give them to sort of take them from that, I need this and this is going to make me feel better, to something else? What thought will help us shift our thinking to a new reality?
And that's the point when we need to start making that new habit. And the best way to do that is, first of all, we have to catch that thought early. The earlier you catch it, the less momentum it has to overcome. So as soon as the thought pops up, do something that helps you to get into a better place, like go for a walk, go paint, go play music, whatever a healthy way to actually get yourself into a quieter state of mind. Because when we get quieter is when our own wisdom is easily heard, or more easily heard. So and it's different for each person. I love, music and woodworking and kayaking and hiking and, all kinds of stuff like that. But each person has something that they know they can do that will help kind of quiet that down. And the quicker we kind of nip that in the bud, the easier it is to build that new pattern.
Yeah.
So we're not giving the momentum to the old one.
I call that self-soothing, that kind of, that sense of being able to, and for me, that's been huge, to be able to self-soothe myself, to find ways to do that in healthy ways. And I was very privileged to interview Deepak Chopra. And he talked about, when he was helping addicts, that he would create environments for them that were all about amazing food and kind of comforts, feather pillows and kind of cocooning yourself, so you can start to feel you can relax and create some space and feel nurtured and loved and together. And then once you start feeling that in your body, having that experience, be it kayaking or a beautiful view or a dog walk, or all of a sudden it can start to, you have a different experience. It's an embodied experience of peace. That's just a thought.
And the understanding from a three principles perspective is, as soon as your personal thinking has quieted down, you are already in the healing process. So those are the emanations of the fact that you're actually, your thought, quiet, only in a state of meditative state, but not the technique of meditation, the actual state of mind. So when that quiet, whenever you have a good feeling, any good feeling, whether it came from bad feeling or whatever, your personal thinking has quieted down. So when Chopra is talking about it, or Greg is talking about it, they're both talking about this has quieted. Then we access our wisdom, our good feelings, and we access our ability to see life for what it is. See, the joke is actually addiction is creating life what it isn't. There's nothing wrong with the addiction on one level. All there is you think it's bad. Well, anything I think is bad, where does my self-esteem go?
Yeah, it's the judgment. Yeah.
So what I teach people is how beautiful you are. And when I had a client, unbelievably high, wise person, but nobody had ever told him he was beautiful, and he had a lot of outside baggage. And I said to him, "You're so beautiful." Honestly, this was his face. And then a big smile. He had never realized that he was beautiful. That's a whole different feeling of peace and contentment versus I'm a loser. I'm diseased for the rest of my life. I don't like myself. And everybody was talking about it. That's the problem with addiction or mental health problem. Everybody wants to talk to you about your problem. Nobody wants to talk about to you when you're happy.
Sure. I think what you were saying is, well, I was interviewing someone earlier today about self-compassion, and how we get so used to that very critical voice, and it could be that we learned it from childhood, etc., etc. And when you're saying to someone that they're beautiful, maybe the first time that they've heard that, because they learned the voice, and habitually they use that voice to talk to themselves. So it's a kind of, it's being able to, for me, I meditate. It's taken me a very, very, very long time. I couldn't almost bear to meditate. I couldn't bear to be with myself because my voice, my critical voice, was so strong, and so it beat me up so badly that I wouldn't even be able to hear you saying, "Oh, you're a beautiful soul," or whatever. I wouldn't hear it because my internal dialogue was so loud about how awful I was, or how blah, blah, blah. And what I found is, when I started talking about it, is that everyone else had one of those voices too. And so with meditation, for me, it's like turning down that volume on that. And all of a sudden, as you said, behind this nonsense, this terrible, there is something else. And there's a calm, and there's a peace, and you just sit with it. And it's incredible. It's amazing. And to me, what you're talking about is very much that kind of turning down the volume on that hideousness. But I think for many of us, it's a very, very loud voice, and it's so abusive, and it's so horrible. It can be very difficult to hear the peace, or to settle back in the peace. So how do we? Because it's so, when you sort of quieten down, that voice can seem louder. So how do we believe? How do we have the courage to believe that there is another reality behind it? I mean, it feels like you have to be brave.
You could say it like that, but the reality, somewhere there, there is another reality. You see, if it wasn't there, then everything we say is just a better mousetrap, that a suggestion. But if it is there, then that's where we're telling you have you access. And the answer is, you never can stop your thinking, ever. It's going to continue. Don't ask me where they come from. That's incredible. So basically, you ignore them. It's like you become less and less attached to your personal thinking, and more conscious. Your consciousness becomes more aware that the bigger, like the supreme thought, or the real thought, the original thought. See, it's still just thought. It's just what you're doing with it. Right use of thought, wrong use of thought. That's all. That's all it is. And right use of thought makes you more aware of facts. Wrong use of thought makes you more aware of illusions, things that you believe are true. And as you know, human beings have a lot of blind spots.
Sure.
And those blind spots, when I talked to Greg and when we did our show, almost always I would have my own blind spots. Sometimes I was humbled, and sometimes it was a bit rough, to be honest. And Greg knows that to be true. But it was always great because the blind spot got removed because I was seeing with paying attention to the wrong thought system. There's like a greater thought system. And you know what that's called? Love. You have love in yourself. And Susie, you want to love yourself. I mean, I certainly want to love myself, And guess what? Most of my life I spent doubting myself.
Sure. But again, it's the power of attention, and and what we put our attention to. And for many of us, that's all we've done. We didn't even. So I remember one of my very first coaches said to me, I was going, oh, no, but that's true. And she said, oh, is that what you believe? And I said, what are you talking about? That's true. And she's like, it's belief. And it was always this kind of moment of, and I was like, oh, you mean I believe it, so it's not true. It was this huge kind of realization for me. And it was kind of a big walking into a door. So I think what's wonderful about, thank you so much for coming today. And what you're both saying is this, so if people are listening to this and they are struggling with addiction, or have people that in their lives who are also struggling from addiction, what you're talking about to me is like, it's a door that's opening into, so you don't have to believe it, just open the door and be curious about the possibility that you can heal from addiction, and why not explore it? I've known about the 3 principles for a long time. I was introduced to it by Coach Michael Neal, and he talked to me about it. And I even remember, and it wasn't that long ago, probably maybe 10 years ago. Is that about right? And even then I was a bit like, what are you saying? I can't understand it, and so, it's being able to open your mind to these ideas so you can explore them and make them real for yourself, I think.
And then fall into the answer. You don't intellectually get this. Greg and I don't really understand the formless nature of the 3 principles. It's beyond our intellect. Even what I said to you is what you were describing, Susie, is exactly and it happens. It happened. And when it happens, everything in your old life stops and your new life starts. And they call that transformation. And that's a reality, guys. We are transforming, evolving in our evolution. It would be nice if we picked up the pace a little bit.
Yeah.
Probably one of the most important things that we can learn to do is be gentle with ourselves, to be forgiving with ourselves. And, we brought up relapse earlier. If you relapse, it doesn't mean you failed. It doesn't mean you weren't doing the right thing. It just means you fell back into that old habit for a moment. So just get back into the new habit. Don't beat yourself up over it. You just create more of those feelings that you're trying to get rid of in the first place.
Yeah.
Practice that self-love and compassion.
Yeah, absolutely. Self-compassion for me is life transforming, and that gentleness, I'm the editor-in-chief of Psychologies, and I know all this stuff, but it's about living it. It's about, and then because you know it, you think, oh, I should be doing this, and then you fail. And so it's the kindness to myself. I've learned that through the hard way. How important is it for us to have a community? I know that your show is absolutely massive in the States. I mean, for me, I'm a massive believer in community, and I think, you know, I know it's the disease model, but I think in a way that's AA can work, because you have, you know, people to talk to and connect with. How important do you feel that community is to the three principles work, or not at all?
Totally important. Greg will answer that because he has a better answer than I have. Go ahead, Greg.
Yeah, community is really very important for everybody. We are social beings. You know, that being said, it doesn't have to be any particular community. You know, a few years ago, I joined a permaculture group, which is mostly dealing with organic gardening and, you know, sustainability.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you what, I found just as much support and healing in that group as I did in any 12-step group. So it's not about any particular group, but yes, we need to be around people that we can connect with at some level.
Yeah. So again, you know, so you don't have to join a group that's all about addiction. It could be a kayaking group, or it could be, but it's about, what I'm hearing, I think you say, is about feeling good. Okay, you know, feeling connected to people.
And then you find the community that supports. But Three Principles is growing in its exposure around the world, and there is more and more feeling towards community. In fact, we just had a conference this weekend, and it was all about we're all equal. You know, the problem with the model of 3P in one level was these are the stars, and we listen to the stars. Well, that model is breaking. We all have the wisdom within ourselves, and when I hear Greg's wisdom, I am enriched. Well, Greg and I, in a sense, created community and fellowship around it. But the real truth is your connection to community and Three Principles is organic. And I'll give you a quick example. I'm working in England, and once a week I meet with 5 guys now, and all who have transformational experiences. And now tomorrow we're going to talk in a show in the UK, a radio show, and that will. So the group is organically growing and attracting people who are interested in not only talking about their problem, but also the solution.
Yeah.
And more importantly, accessing their own wisdom. And when they access their wisdom, our little community grows. Because I see, wow, I didn't really understand that. You know, I'm supposed to be the lead, but I didn't understand what he was saying or she was saying, you know, type of thing. And that's what happened to Greg and I on our show. The participants made the show. Greg and I grew by sharing. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
But the participants made the show good, medium, or boring.
Yeah. Well, boys, thank you so much for joining me this evening. That was a really inspiring and enlightening interview. And I hope that people listening, you know, if they're struggling with addiction or know people who are struggling with addiction, will be willing to open that door and explore this model, Three Principles. All your details are up above. They're all, you can see and explore you. Which show are you on tomorrow in the UK? Can you remember?
It's an internet radio show. It's with the Phoenix Group or something, and
Okay.
So actually, I don't know the exact details, and it won't be released for a month or so. It's
people can check you out on your YouTube show. You've done over 80 shows, and I know you've got a massive following over in the US. So
worldwide.
Worldwide.
No, we are definitely worldwide. I have clients in every continent right now, every continent in the world. And it's an organic thing. Don't ask us where they come from, but come they do. And the YouTube channel has different sections that will help people, all free. And then we have a podcast as well, as I mentioned. And then Greg and I are always willing to offer our help. And if you want to feel good, talk to Greg. Yeah.
Well, I'm feeling better already. Boys, thank you so much for your time today. It's really, really fantastic. I'm so delighted to have spoken to you today, and I really hope that your message is going to get out to as many people as you possibly can. Lots of love. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Susie.
Bye.
That